So Men of War 2 has just released, and this is a game that I've actually been looking forward to for so long. The developers behind it, Best Way, are actually the guys that started this franchise. All the way back in the early to mid 2000s, they brought out Men of War, this World War II RTS game that blew people away with this destructive terrain, these stories, this top-down command level, but also being able to direct control each individual troop and armor. Speaking of armor, you had a plethora of vehicles, weapons, individuals, troop types, and also being able to call in different things. There's a fly going around my room. I'm being able to call in supplies and airdrops. It was incredible, and it really started off a huge franchise. Then we got Assault Squad 2, and well, the original Assault Squad, but Assault Squad 2 is the main game that I think most people played, and that was by a different development company at the time. Both of them were sort of in tandem working on this franchise. Then Call to Arms came out. A new development company was coming involved, and Call to Arms Ostfront is the most recent and the most popular, is the most refined, and due to this development company and a lot of modders that came together, they created this beautiful symphony and the peak that the Men of War franchise has really ever been at. So Men of War 2, despite being almost a decade after the first game, is actually the first true sequel that we've actually got of the mainline franchise. So there's a lot of hype behind it. And as you can see by the Steam reviews, not much of it's all that positive. It is currently sitting at mixed reviews on Steam, and with 57 out of the 1,500 people that reviewed it being positive, it's not exactly a good look for the future of this game. I had a lot of worries about it because I played some of the beta tests that were a couple of years back, or maybe about a year and a half ago, and there were so many issues with this and so many fundamental flaws that I just didn't like about the game. For one, it just didn't feel like Men of War anymore. There was this notion that Men of War in the RTS World War II sort of genre was the more hardcore out of that and, well, the opposer Company of Heroes. But Men of War 2, the early versions we saw, just tend to blur the lines a little bit. It tended to go down that more arcadey nature, and no one quite knew why, until you look into the history of this game. You see, Men of War 2 was never intended to be billed as this. It was initially intended to be Men of War Arena, a free-to-play version of this franchise that, focuses on the arcadey nature. Huge 8v8 multiplayer battles rather than the individual stories that were told by the classics like Assault Squad 2. So when we got news that Men of War 2 was being delayed because it was being completely reworked, at least I had some hope. Yet then it came out. First of all, the gameplay is pretty much the same as Assault Squad 2. It definitely is a Men of War game, at least in some aspects. In some others, they completely missed the mark again. But if you're looking for a similar thing to Men of War Assault Squad 2, you're going to be getting it. And that, for me, is an issue. This is a game that is, 10 years after Assault Squad 2 came out, and the gameplay mechanics are pretty much the same. So for many other reasons, as we'll get onto, I would still probably pick Assault Squad 2 over this any day. The game does have 4-player co-op, and this isn't just in certain game modes, this is pretty much throughout. So you can play the campaigns with 3 other friends, you can play skirmishes with 3 other friends, and of course there are the multiplayer modes and the matchmaking games that all the Men of War games have had, which is kind of a nice touch. Yet, then you actually get into some of the content that isn't already baked in. And that's talking about the factions. Probably one of the main aspects of the game. You want various factions that have various weapons, arms, and armor to differentiate themselves, right? This is what made Assault Squad 2 so great, having Soviets, the Commonwealth, the Germans, the Japanese. They were all part of this, and modding even spread that further to Eastern Europe and beyond, and it was incredible. There are 3 factions within Men of War 2. There's America, the Soviets, and Germany. The British or Commonwealth aren't even in the game. The French aren't even in the game. Okay, granted, they weren't in Assault Squad 2, but these are huge factions that don't even make any notice within here. I mean, even in Assault Squad 2, we had mods that added in Australia and New Zealand, but they were also part of the Commonwealth, and it just feels like this is a new game with so much less content and draw to it than a game that was a decade old. Also, this is so much less polished. Unit pathing is awful. There's also civilians and AI within multiplayer battles, which make no difference. It doesn't immerse you within the game. I kind of get it within single player missions because you are part of these missions going into urbanized areas that are populated, but within the multiplayer, What's the point? They just have these guys that get stuck on rocks or within buildings, and it just looks absolutely awful, completely ruining your immersion. I guess you can ride on horseback. So, a new edition? I don't... Whose idea was... I mean, it's kind of funny, but whose idea was it? But it gets worse. Look, gameplay issues aside, bugs aside, they can all be solved and they can all be somewhat rectified. Do you know what is the biggest issue and the main reason this is getting absolutely slammed at the moment? Well, that's due to the fact it's always online, even the single player parts. This baffles me. Playing a campaign on your own within Men of War that is completely scripted and story orientated with units that are pre-coded that, you know, you can play as just you and nobody else, has to be done online. Yeah, you have to be able to connect to a server before you can play anything, including the single player, which is baffling to me, and this is making people absolutely furious. The developers have said that it's because they want to be able to track achievements and leaderboards well, and also to stop cheating. Why does cheating matter in a single player variant of your game? I don't know, but even so, they then put out a statement saying that there'll be a patch soon taking away this always online feature. Okay, so it's not that important, because if it was important and if it really stopped cheating, keep that thing on, but it clearly doesn't, does it? That's why you're willing to take it off. You just wanted to keep it on because, well, it's DRM and you can track people that own your game. They're always online just seems to be the way that games are going these days, and it's absolutely grim. According to a lot of testers, and I can see this as well, the game just hasn't changed from the early versions. There was an open beta about a year and a half ago, as mentioned, but there have been tests that I haven't been invited to and other closed tests, not just with content creators, but, you know, people that actually know what they're talking about. And they gave feedback. They gave most of the feedback that the health bars didn't make any sense on vehicles. There was a lot of feedback where there was too much clutter on the UI. The UI makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It is disgusting to look at and almost impossible to read at places. Unit card positions are in weird situations. And there were hundreds and hundreds of issues that were brought up, and the developers said, okay, we understand these issues. And they ignored pretty much all of them. I know that this game was going to be released back in February because I was about to do a sponsored video on it. Or at least I was approached to do one. I never said yes at that point in time because I wanted to see what the game had improved to. Then that campaign was delayed because the game was delayed. And it's come out now, and it's still in probably one of the worst states that I've ever seen a Men of War game. This is just a disaster. How do you get all this feedback, this plethora of people from all walks of life and having every single type of intention when it comes to games? Not just YouTubers, not just people that like the game for the game's sake, but people that are hardcore history buffs and people that are veteran Men of War players. How do you get all of that data and just ignore it? Because you can tell this is still the Men of War arena that they said they weren't making anymore. What they've just done is changed and tweaked a few things to make it a little bit more like Men of War, but slapped the Men of War 2 title on it to make people think this is a mainline Men of War game. But really, it was the free-to-play arena game that it was always built to be. And that is what annoys me more than anything. They went away for pretty much no reason. They should have started this game from the ground up. You can see some of the pedigree of the original developers in there because there are some things like beautiful sound effects. There are some really nice and cool innovations like being able to build your own trenches from nothing. That is awesome. But then you have things like the always online features, the horrible arcadey UI, or the fact that tanks still have goddamn health bars, and then you just see, okay, yeah, this is just Men of War Arena that is just not changed whatsoever. That's why it's so bad. And that's why I think people are so angry at Men of War 2. It was delayed for months for no good reason as far as I can see. I'll be doing a full review over on the main channel very, very soon, so make sure you hop over and go and check that out. The link will be in the description. But I just wanted to give you an update of my current thoughts and, well, the thoughts of the community at this point in time. It's currently sitting, and I think is going to go to negative at some point in time. From the reviews and the amount of reviews, I still don't think it sold all that well. I just hope the Assault Squad 2 guys come back, or we get another Gates of Hell set in World War II, because that was done pretty well. And yes, I know that fly still hasn't left. It is still around my... Go away!